well Saturday. With Daywin Wilkins' injury the week before and being out a few weeks, he probably had to work. His workload even increased a little bit, and I thought he had a really good day for us out there Saturday. And Julian's been phenomenal, doing his job. He's that guy. You probably never hear about him because he usually in his job you got to see something bad happen to hear about him. But he's been phenomenal in that role for us, and just outstanding at our university in every way, and one of our best students, and but really appreciate them being with us today. But certainly disappointed. I told our team yesterday, first time on Sunday. We're sitting here on Sunday when we work now on Sundays. We have a practice on Sundays after an FCS loss, and certainly not something we want to get used to doing. And disappointing how the game came out. Certainly with some unusual circumstances, but it's one we own. It was one we own, and we had every opportunity to make plays on both sides of the ball, and we didn't do enough of them, and give Sanford credit. And and then we've moved on, and that's behind us, and getting ready for a certainly great rivalry game in Charleston. We were just down there 2 weeks ago, and I'm sure I'll get a few questions about a few things today, but by and large, I think when we watch this football game right now, we're just making a lot of mistakes that are costing us. I'll say this, and had a little time to reflect on this. This is my 29th year part of this program. We've been fortunate to win a lot of games, have a lot of success, and I don't mean this in a negative way. I don't think we've ever won tons of games around here by out-talenting people. We're not going to do that now. We have some talented players. We have some good football players, but we're just not going to out-talent people. And it's the nature of the world. It's the nature of our school, who our pool of players is to recruit, which I heartily embrace that, and what our guys are about. These two guys are great examples of that. But we have won tons of these games, or bunches of games over the years, by doing, the old saying, doing common tasks uncommonly well. And that's how we have to play. And right now, we're not doing those things. We hadn't done the last couple of weeks. And you know what? Can you still win some football games? Yeah, you can. But to be at the level we want to be at, those are things we've got to address. And we're striving for excellence. Nobody has higher expectations for us than me. But those are things we just have to do better. And easily defensively, we've got to quit giving up big plays. We're doing some really good things defensively. We've got to quit giving up big plays. We've got to tackle better. Do I expect us to make every tackle? Absolutely not. But we're better than we've done and shown some in those situations. And then I think those are two things that really stand up. And then, offensively, I don't know, I think we had 97 recorded plays. We're not getting enough production out of the number of plays we've had. We haven't been nearly good enough in the red zone scoring touchdowns, Turnovers have killed us the last 2 weeks. I think we've had 6 offensively in the last 2 weeks, and if that number's in half, we probably win both games going away. So I think those are things that we've got to address. We've got to be better in the red zone. We've had Saturday 2 red zone trips. We get 2 false starts. We both end up kicking field goals in both of them after we dropped a touchdown pass. If we score 2 touchdowns, we win the football game. And so. But that's got to be us. That's who we are. And we don't live in the transfer world. We're not renting players for the fall semester and for the year. And I don't want to do that. We're not going to do that here. I love our guys, and I have a lot of confidence in our football team and our players and our staff. But those are things that we got to do better, going forward. And so we get a great opportunity this week to do it. We can have a great year. It's all out there before us. But there's some things we got to address to do better. And our kids are playing hard. If they're not doing that, none of the other stuff matters. But they are playing hard. They're being physical. But again, we've got to get more production really on both sides of the ball. So with that being said, Scott, fire away.
Coach, I understand the willingness to move on and everything, but I have to ask because Southern Conference released a statement this morning. That's not the typical, something you don't see every Monday.
Yeah,
I just want to know your reaction.
Well, I don't know they've ever done that, was what I was told. I did see it. I was told that they have been great in communication with us ever since Saturday. I do know what has happened and what has done, but we'll kind of leave it at that. Unfortunate incident, one I've never been a part of. I told somebody, to describe that happening the day it was almost, and I hadn't been around a lot of, you're on the field when maybe a really bad injury or something happens and you bring, and the game gets, because real time it was almost 15 minutes. And I mean, I'd look back, what would I have done different? I even thought about one time grabbing Andre Bernardi and rewarming up our guys, but but when we were told we were getting the ball, then we were told we weren't, and it just kept, should I walked across the field when the long conversation was going on after the review, which I couldn't understand why that was happening. I don't know. So you always, looking back at it. But again, we own it. We didn't respond very well after that happened. And Scott, ultimately, and I can't talk about those stuff and don't really want to, but basically what happened was the initial play, a really bad decision was made on a call. The play went to review, and as I was told by the people reviewing it, I'm talking about the people who reviewed it since Saturday, it should have been a review, ball loose, turnover, 15-second review was the verbiage I was told. It should have been a 15-second review, first down Furman at 28. That was it. And next thing I know, there's a conversation going on. There's a statement that was made that there was a forward progress stoppage, which was impossible on that play. So that's where it all started. Really, really, really bad decision, call on the field. That somehow got back to, it wasn't addressed in the first 5 minutes or so of the delay. At that point in time, that is not reviewable if there's a stoppage of forward progress or forward progress. And at that point in time, you can't review it. But that's what should have never happened. There was never a catch made. There was never possession. You can't have forward progress without a catch and forward progress, and it bang bang. Ivan made a great play. Really, in fact, I was told their biggest concern might have been was their targeting, because it was a hard hit, but it was hard clean hit. But he possessed the ball. Their guy never possessed it, and that's what triggered it all. So the second review really wasn't a review, because at that point in time, they said, we can't review it. And certainly I've had questions, why did it go back to that? Why was it happening on their sideline? We had one later in the game that was overturned, and I was never even given a response. I knew it was close, and I thought the guy called it, tucked it, and we stripped it. And they reviewed it pretty quickly, did not allow it, and I can live with that, but I was never given any kind of consideration. And, you guys were there. Again, coaches, we should have gotten our team to move to a better play, moved on through all that, but it was just, we had played, one of the things I've been stressing, we got to start faster, man. I thought we played about as well as we could play in the first quarter. Thought we were dominating the football game. I punted it down, then we punted it to the 5. I said, we're playing good defense. We're going to get a stop. And then, our game is such a game of momentum. And just for it to happen the way I just thought was egregious. It has been addressed. I'd rather have a first down on the 28, and let us play. But that's not an option, so we've moved on, But that's as best I can explain it, And again, I'm pleased with how the conference has responded. I don't know what else you can do. And again, I kind of know what they've done, but that's for them. I don't think they're going to respond any more about it.
Well, and Coach, Charleston Southern got behind by 9. This situation got down by 17. Seems like you just seem to be chasing a little bit here the last couple of ball games.
Yeah, I do, and it's been turnovers. It's been turnovers. It's been big plays allowed. Finally flipped the field at Charleston Southern. We had a really bad non-turnover overturned at Charleston Southern on a replay, and I'm a little tired of that happening. We had one at Western Carolina last year, and it wasn't a turnover, so I'm a little bit tired of that. That's why we have it. But it wasn't a replay. I think the replay got it right. It was just the calls that were made on the field, and then obviously the prolonged. It's like I was told. Even being with and I could live with this, even being a forward progress stoppage. Okay, they got the ball. 45 seconds pass, we go play. I'm probably not very happy if they do that. I'm probably really not very happy on Sunday when I see the tape. But I just think it would have been a totally different. But it evolved into something totally that it should have never been. And obviously it affected us greatly. And shouldn't have. It shouldn't have. It shouldn't have happened, and then we shouldn't have responded. We should have responded better. So.
Cam, you guys have been really aggressive in the secondary this year, and that a byproduct of that is, the big hit he was talking about in the game, and the one I guess you had in the East Tennessee State game. Since you guys are so aggressive and have gotten, I think, 9 interceptions now, does that make you more susceptible to the big play?
I don't think so at all. I think the defensive backs have been playing with a lot of confidence, which has helped us greatly in secondary. And I think the big plays come from a lack of execution from a defensive standpoint. And some guys getting out of their gaps, some guys missing their man. That's how big plays happen.
Clay, I know you said this the other day, but and I also know that stoppage of the game. I remember years ago there was an injured player that took the momentum out of the game, and the game changed after that. And Cam, in defense, it seems to me, is often more emotional. Offensive linemen can't get so fired up that they can't be disciplined in what they're doing. But did it take that dramatically, the wind out of your sails? When you went back out there, were you just like, all of a sudden lost your edge?
I don't think we necessarily lost our edge. I think that we let that play affect us in a way that it shouldn't have at all. And I think that we let it snowball kind of into several bad drives too. And I think that's what hurt us a lot.
Well, Monty, I think it's maybe a five-play drive after that. Was it 5 plays? It's just we talk about the assignment, execution-wise, and both touchdown passes were blown assignments. Both runs were not blown assignments, but missed tackles. And they ran the same play again a few times, and the other times, I think the one that stands out, we missed a tackle, the same guy made the tackle, and Bryce McCormick tackled the guy for a 5-yard loss. Same exact play, 4th and 1. We're not in the gap we're supposed to be in. It should have been a negative yardage play, so it really is that. And then after that, they kick it off. What do? We drive it to midfield. I think it's maybe when Jace's run turnover. And they responded, so, okay, let's take it back. We were moving. They hadn't stopped us. We were moving the football, and we turn it over. Then I think they scored again off that. Had the other turnover on the 40 going in. So and like I said, it was everybody. It was we felt like special teams wise, we didn't really affect the game. We always want to affect the game in special teams in a special, in a positive way. We didn't there, but it was both sides of the football, And then I think offensively, the thing that we're really lacking, in my opinion, is just we've got some good players. We've got to be a little more explosive. Run and catch, and explosive runs. And guys, we're not going to block them perfect every time, winning one-on-ones. And I just don't know how many one-on-ones we won the other day. We lost several that were really key. And that's, again, doing those common tasks, really, really well. Because, there may be some people who don't want to hear that, but we're not going to out-talent a lot of people. And, again, we've got some talented players, we do. And we got to play great as a team, and we just cannot beat ourselves. And, I mean, again, I won't take any away from our opponent, but I thought in a lot of ways we beat ourselves the other day. And we tried to do that the week before a little bit. And again, it's all correctable stuff, but we got to get to work.
Clay, part of my job in the radio booth is to tell the story of the game and then the next game, and ultimately you're telling the story of an entire season. Can you see a scenario where when the story of this season is told at the end of the year that this past Saturday, not just the play, but taking the whole thing into consideration, that this week may end up being a defining moment for this football team moving forward?
I think that's something you look on when it's all said and done. You could maybe say that. I don't know. I think it's any time you get you're not successful, how do you respond? And I thought we didn't play particularly well a week ago, and I thought our kids really responded, in the way we started that football game. And but that's why you play 4 quarters. Got to do that. You may look back and feel that way. I don't think anybody's going through this league undefeated, and I just think I tell them we can have a great year. We really can. All those things we want to do, they're out there, but there are things we gotta fix and things we gotta be better at, and again, understanding, how we have to win football games. And, schemes are part of that. I think we got good schemes on both sides of football. I think our coaches are doing a good job, but we've got to be more productive. We've got to quit, allowing some plays and some things happen. And, that's what I see.
Julian, I'm sure somewhere along the line when you decided you're going to be a long snapper, you kind of bought into the fact that you wouldn't get a lot of camera time, but so we're glad to have you here today. I just want to ask, you've had a chance to work with 3 pretty good kickers and some good punters already in your career. Those guys taking care of you as far as meals and stuff, and how much do you like to remind them that you're a lot of times the first guy down the field making tackles on things?
Well, I mean, I think it's been a great unit to work with. We've definitely got some camaraderie in our unit, and I think one of the cool things about special teams is often there's a lot of autonomy, on the field. We kind of know our position better than anybody else will, and so there's a lot of holding each other accountable. Even the other day, as we're working through things in the game, and I'm, looking at maybe what Levy's doing and saying, hey, I mean, this doesn't look like what we're doing in practice. How can we work here? Or he's coming back to me after a punt and saying, hey, let's adjust this. And so it's cool how we kind of keep each other accountable and focused and disciplined. And I think definitely we take care of each other off the field. We spend a lot of time, not focused on football, but whether that's eating in the dining hall or talking about classes and whatnot. So it definitely has been enjoyable, both with the guys here and in the past. So that's a huge part of the job, is just knowing the guys and being able to depend on them and whatnot.
And as a follow-up to Hunter's question, how does a guy that's obviously as intelligent as you are decide he wants to look at the world upside down, snapping the ball bent over that way? How did you get into that?
So I guess it was my sophomore year of high school when I started snapping. Played quarterback all through high school and was kind of a backup in that role, but I guess just one day saw somebody snapping at practice and said, I guess I can probably do that. So tried it out, and that was my kind of way onto the team and varsity as a high schooler. And I think it's sort of the same mentality now about how can I contribute in a role, and that's just been where I think I have the biggest impact on the team. And I definitely take pride in that, being able to focus on my job and just really service our kickers, punters, holders, all of those things. So their perspective is cool, a little disorienting at times, but when you do it, when you get so many reps of it, you get used to seeing things a little upside down. So I enjoy it for sure.
Probably have a hard time right side up.
Coach, I want to ask you something. I'd like Cam's perspective on this after I get yours. It's Citadel Week. In years past here, you prepare for this type of offense quite a few times, and now I guess this is going to be the only one this season, maybe. What goes into that now that not as many teams run offenses like Citadel still runs, and how do you prepare?
Yeah, you know what, and we were doing some of it. You know, we really hadn't, we really hadn't done. So, our defense would see a little bit more out of our offense. It certainly is challenging. I learned a long time ago and certainly spent 10 years at the academy, you better not try to figure it out in a week. So we have spent some time. I know, because we've been doing some drill work on Sundays. We take a little short bit of time on our Sunday work where we've been doing some option stuff, responsibility. I think our coaches have a really comfortable. They're comfortable. Kevin Lewis spent a year at West Point. Tommy Spangler spent a little time against Georgia Southern in his career back in the heyday of they were the gurus of it. They certainly do a really good job of it. Coach Thompson knows it really well. I'm kind of the consultant in there a little bit. It's, a little bit more of the offense perspective. We do this, what are you going to do? So I kind of enjoy that part of it, being able to jump in there. But no, I think it's one of those weeks you got to embrace. I always thought playing when I was part of an offense like that, it was, testing somebody's will a little bit, because, you're a pass rusher. Well, good luck. You're not going to get a lot of opportunities this week. And, there's not a lot of nice stuff about it. And, double teams and you name it, and here they come. And, I think a lot of it's just embracing it. And so, yeah, certainly we don't go today. We'll come back tomorrow, and we got to have a great Tuesday and Wednesday. But and then being great in the back half just because, you get so in tune with what's going on, they raise up and throw one over your head. So.
Coach, do you get your scout team has to do lots of different things. Sanford totally different, and then the Citadel this week. Do you feel like you get really good looks in that regard each week? That's tough on them.
Yeah, I think our look, because we do enough of the spread stuff that we feel like we can play, and we've seen that Sanford style. We work really hard at the tempo part of it, which they do, and we'll see it again in 2 weeks. Western Carolina comes in, they're going to do it. Yeah, I think we've always got a pretty good work. We've had a little bit of shortage of offensive linemen this entire fall, so it's made it a little more challenging in that regard. But again, I think our guys have always had a good plan and a good system in place to handle it that week, and making sure you get the right looks, that you need. And, we've spent a lot of time in the off season preparing for this. And like I said, it's something you better do.
Cam, can you talk about, I know the coaches obviously do film study, but you as a defensive back, can you talk about some of the things that you look at on film when you're facing an opponent? And this week you'll have kind of a unique situation because you'll be facing a guy in Peyton Derrick who was also at Wofford. Do you pay attention to tendencies or unique just skill sets that a guy has on film?
Definitely. I pay attention to tendencies, maybe splits, to see if that gives away what routes are coming. I look at how they run their routes. I look at how big the receivers are, how fast they are, how they're getting in and out of their breaks. Also look at offensive line. Are they giving away anything? Like, is the guard pulling? Just things of that nature, too.
Cam, going against a team like the way the Citadel does, their offense, if it's working, is grounded in fundamentals, and everyone is executing similar things. Does that also, for a team that's had a problem with a few busted assignments, does that make defense have to be just as meticulous, follow rules just as closely? Because I think that many times Citadel's kind of a case where this is what we're doing. If we do it right, doesn't matter whether you know it's coming or not, you can't stop it. Well, that will has to be on the other side too, I would guess.
I think we definitely have to execute this week, especially in the back end. I know that Citadel doesn't throw the ball often, but if they do, it's for a big gain. If we aren't doing our assignments to the best of our abilities, it could cost us.
Coach, two quick ones. First of all, just your thoughts on the guy sitting to your right, Julian Ashby, because he's kind of like an offensive lineman. You never really talk about him unless he messes up, and he doesn't mess up a whole lot. So just your thoughts there. And then I'll ask the second one.
Well, I see. It's funny, Julian. Golly, we needed a guy. When we were recruiting him, it was obviously a great situation for a guy coming in, and really I think we're battling Duke. Great academic scholarship to Duke. And I knew and I think that was going to be an option for him football. But I think he wanted to, that was something that was really important to him. He's been a phenomenal addition to our group here. And just leadership, watching him. Like I said, you're covering scout team kickoff, and you look where there's Julian running down the field covering scout team kickoff. He just jumps in there because he wants to help out. I think Julian could make a living snapping the ball for a short period of time. Now, Julian's going to have some pretty good opportunities, physics major, and he's going to have lots of opportunities, so he may have to decide what he wants to do. But, man, I think he's as good as there is at what he does. And again, I certainly don't ever take him for granted and just kind of, guy he is, his family, all those factors, man, we're just thrilled to have him here.
The other question I had was, is there an update on Dominic Morris and his availability?
I think Dominic will be ready to go. I actually think we kind of came out, we didn't have Dom Saturday. Didn't have Tyler. Tyler, we'll see how Tyler does. He was out there yesterday. We'll see how that one kind of goes. Day-One Wilkins, Day-One had surgery last week. Hopefully 4 weeks, maybe give or take, get him back. And then Jeremiah Jackson we lost for the year, which was a really, really bad thing. Really should have never happened, and guy stood there and watched it happen. Something totally not to do with the football play, and I just hated it for him. Had to have surgery, and he will miss the rest of the season. I think we'll have a chance to have our guys. Everybody's a little banged up right now, but we're kind of getting through it. And we played almost 100 snaps on offense. So we've played a lot of snaps on offense. Those guys up front, I'd like to see us have a few more explosion plays and be a little more productive point wise. But I don't think we're overall in really bad shape. We made a little bit of shuffle in the defensive line, and I thought we did a really good job of getting knocked back. I think we got five sacks Saturday, and man, we had 3 or 4 other good chances to get the guy I wish we had. But those guys are playing at a pretty good level, and this week obviously will be different.
Coach, your team has been excellent. I think they've scored last possession of every first half, 4 touchdowns in the last 4 games. Been dominant in the fourth quarter. Third quarter, coming out of halftime. How do you is there anything you can do in terms of you're really good in this fourth quarter, you're really good in that 2-minute offense, and because the third quarter's been kind of a bugaboo?
Yeah, I hadn't paid a lot of attention to that. I do know I wanted to start faster, and we did do that Saturday. It'll be something we'll look at and address. And, certainly the way we came out the other day, you're sitting there, we had the score, it was 2017. Okay, they're getting the ball. Let's go get a stop. 5 or 6 play drive, touchdown. That hurts a little bit. And then, but then I think we take the drive down and get a field goal blocked, which would have made it a 1-possession game. And that's just one guy didn't do his job. I thought we hit the kick good. Will we have made it? I don't know. Just certain things. I know you mentioned 3rd and short. And I went back and looked at it. We were 3 for 4, 3rd and short. Had a 3rd and 1 that we jumped offside zone, which was a killer. It ended up costing us a field goal. And then, the one that hurt, the last one, was a 3rd and 2, and we got stopped. There when we were, early in the fourth, where we still had a chance to, we're still feeling like we could unscore, make it a 1-score game, like that. So I think we're looking at all that. Again, our kids are, they're playing hard. They're doing a lot of good things, but just to be the team we want to be, there's some things we got to do better.
Coach, you talked about coming in on Sundays and taking Mondays off, and get a reaction from all 3 of you. Do you like that?
Well, it's funny. I've done this. I hadn't been the boss for 37 years, but I debated about it. But just the way our schedule is, I've actually really, really liked it from a prep standpoint. I told them we're kind of here either way. It would be interesting to hear these guys take. I know it's a little bit mixed. You like truly having a day off because they still have class. I do think our Tuesday practices have been better. I think the recovery times have been better, but probably good to hear their response.
Sure. I'll say I think it's been good, especially on a week like this, where before we're even in meetings, before we're even at practice, we're in the weight room yesterday, and Coach Bernardi makes it real clear. There's no time to feel sorry about whatever happened the day before, but it's get back to work, get in, get better. And then, like Coach was saying, by Tuesday, we're working on, or even by today, we're focused on the next opponent. And so I think that timeline's been good in terms of forcing us to stay focused on what's ahead and not mope too much about what may have happened the day before. And so it's been real productive, I think, on all three sides of the ball, and recovery's been a big part of that too. So.
Yeah, it's definitely been different getting used to practicing on Sundays. I'm a senior now, and this is my first year ever doing something like this. So it's been different, but I definitely think that from a recovery standpoint, it's better for us for sure. I feel better going into Tuesdays with our Mondays off.
I'll say this, we would have been sitting here today, and we still probably would not have watched the tape from Saturday with our team in the old way because of what we were forced to do. And, man, it's good to be able to move on. Learn from it, put it to bed, move on. And, we're out there about an hour. It's really just trying to get our guys. We try to correct some things. We do try to make a, concerted effort to move on there at the very end. But it's been productive, for us.
When you look at last year, the running game has been effective, but it has not been a breakaway running game. It's more like it's been more of a 4 to 10 yards. And what is lacking that was there last year was long runs. And I just wonder what you do at this point to try to address that, because when you have to run the ball down, there's that many more chances of a turnover or makeup, and it's a tough road to hoe.
Well, I think a couple of things. We hadn't need to get probably one of our young guys to do a little bit of study of our touchdown drives, but I think we've had a lot of multiple play touchdown drives, and I'm like you. You do that enough, false start, penalty, turnover, negative yardage play. That's a tough thing to do. I do think we've played some better defenses. I think there's a combination of that a little bit. Now, we relied much heavily more on it last year. Maybe a little more option-based. It maybe created some of those, but had really struggled in the passing game. I think we've done some really good things in the passing game. We've also had to do it with two quarterbacks so far, and I think, there's a reason why Tyler, the first couple of weeks, couple of weeks, 3 weeks, how he played, and, he got some really good rushing yards, did against the Clemson team, and so I think there's been a few factors in there. Now, we're always going to look at personnel. Is there some things we can do? We'll always look at the scheme. I think we've played pretty solidly up front, but we can play better. It's perimeter blocking. It's lots of things. So I think we'll continue to look at that, and I want to be better, and we should be better. And again, are we just loaded with the Blazers and all that stuff? No, but we're talented enough. It's winning one-on-ones, because right now about every team you see is going to have a safety probably unblocked up there at some point in time, and at some point, we got to win a one-on-one with a safety and turn it into an explosive play. So I think we'll look at all the above, but I'm with you. I'd like to see that. I'd like to see that better. Just chunks of yardage we hadn't quite gotten. I'd like to see our receivers doing a better job of runs after catches. I know sometimes those are bang plays where you don't really have an opportunity, but we're talented enough to do that. I'd love to hit a couple of those deep balls. We missed Josh on the one that I think would have been a touchdown. The strip sack. We were a little bit unlucky the way the protection thing happened. We had guys going where they were supposed to, and it's just the way it played out. We had a deep ball called, and he's open, but we don't get – and I think we've done a great job protecting. I do think that's one of the best things we've done, but we didn't on that play, and it cost us. So I think it all goes together. But to be honest with you, Monty, I feel good about where we are in the passing game and a lot of things we're doing, and I think we can get better at the other part because I think we got the pieces in place to do that. But that is something, that is a priority, I know, for me.
Kind of staying with that point of making the big play in the passing game. I know you've got a guy like Wayne Anderson who's very fast. I think he had a 27-yard gain on a pass, kind of where Jace had scrambled. And then Kendall Dean, I thought he did a nice job on. I guess that was a little rocket play you guys ran. You talk about those two guys and just kind of the uniqueness of having them and the creativity to kind of get the ball for them to make plays in space. Just talk about those two guys.
Well, Wayne making that transition. Now, we had some huge drops Saturday, way too many, and they really weren't really hard catches. Got to fix that. That's not something we've done. Kendall's been great. It's here in a grad program. Kendall's been a really dependable, low-maintenance kind of guy that I like, that comes out there and works, and he's brought a lot to the table. He's done some really good things for us. Had the turnover after that run, which was a huge play too. They were all huge in that one. Wayne, I think, continue to find ways to use Wayne and get him the ball, because, again, I think we got enough of those guys that can do those kinds of things, but they've been really good parts of what we're doing. Had a little depth out there. You saw Ethan Harris got the game the other day, first time, made 2 big third down catches. Got him healthy. And there's another guy or two you may see, but again, I just like to see us having some more explosive plays taking place, because I just think we're talented enough in those areas to do those things, and we're playing. Jace, I thought had a solid day. We'd like to give our guys a little better chance to catch a ball in transition after a catch. He's made a few plays with his feet. Again, ball security is still got to be big. And I watched this game from last year, and wow, it seems like 5 minutes in the game we'd had 2 turnovers and a touchdown, and it was kind of, I think it was Jace's second start ever. It's those common things that we got to do better, and it's ball security, and it's not. I don't think we're busting, a lot of assignments offensively, but there are some things we got to do better. And, I don't know how else you do them other than you go out there and you practice them better.
Before we wrap it up, Cam, 5 games into the season, the defense has not allowed a point yet in the fourth quarter. Is that becoming a point of pride right now?
Oh, most definitely. I think we pride ourselves in not allowing opponents to score in the fourth quarter against us. I think Bernardi kind of plays a big factor into that because of our money sets, and fourth quarter are considered our money quarter, and that's where we make our money at.
Coach, any final thoughts before we wrap it up?
No, just excited to get back. Obviously got a great rivalry game this week, and certainly a hugely important game for us, and things we want to do in the conference and down the road. And I really expect our guys to come back ready to work, have a great day tomorrow, and I guess we get to go to Charleston for the second time in 3 weeks. So, but no, just looking forward to getting back and playing again.
Well, we will remind fans that kickoff at Johnson Haygood Stadium against the Citadel on Saturday is 2 p.m. From a radio standpoint, we will have the Pepsi Countdown to kickoff on air on the Fan Upstate at 12:30 p.m. That's 97.7 FM in Greenville, 97.1 in Spartanburg, and on the Odyssey app. You can just search the Fan Upstate there. Television will be ESPN3. And mentioning Andre Bernardi, he will be the guest on this week's edition of Inside Furman Athletics, which will be available tomorrow early afternoon on Furman's social media and the YouTube channel. Andre's one of those guys, Coach, I say he makes coffee nervous. So anyway, that'll take care of this edition of Furman Football Monday with Clay Hendricks. Thanks to Coach, thanks to Cam Brinson, thanks to Julian Ashby. And as always, this has been a Jeff Schetzel and Hunter Reed production. So long, everybody.